The following is brought to you by paulakers.net.
Welcome to another episode of my wake-up call. This is Dr. Mark Goulston. You know kind of how we roll here. I bring to you people that inspire me, people who are up to good stuff. But let me tell you a little bit how I met Paul. I didn't meet him in person. I watched a wonderful reInvent summit that Scaling Up guru and author Vern Harnish puts on. And he had these amazing people on, I think for 12 minutes apiece, may have been 10 minutes. That was the other day. And there was something about Paul that touched me. He sent me his biography and there's a picture of him and he says, curiosity where it all starts.
Curiosity is everything, isn't it? I always say that lean is really kindergarten lean. If you want to be good at lean, you have to become like a child. You have to be able to say, hey, I didn't know that. I'm curious about that. Wow, I learned something new. And that is what you see in your grandchild as well. And that is really the disposition we all need to take on to be successful at lean.
So tell me about, because you're also talking about something that we often hear about, which is having a beginner's mind, which is being able to look at something with no agenda, without trying to put it into buckets prematurely and just immersing yourself in it. Someone I've often spoken about, and Paul's listened to some of my podcasts, but I had a mentor named Warren Bennis who shared with me a quote he got from Saul Bellow, which was, be a first-class noticer.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And that's the key to my life. I'm in Japan right now and I'm driving around. And as I look around, I'm always like, wow, did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see that? I went into a gas station just yesterday, Mark, and it was just amazing because I noticed that the gas station attendants all ran out to greet you and they were running around cleaning the car and cleaning the windows and bowing and being very polite. And to me, that was like a marvel. And I actually made a video about that and posted on YouTube, and it's super popular because people go, wow, I didn't know service could be at that level in the 21st century. Just noticing all these small details.
So were you always a noticer from a young age? I mean, where did that start? Or did you have parents who were noticers, or where does that come from?
Yes, my father, amazing parents. My father died. He was an electrical engineer for General Dynamics, and he was a classic farm boy who had to make do with very little and raised through the Depression. And he was curious about everything, and he was not afraid to make a fool of himself. And I say that because I love Steve Jobs' quote about be comfortable with being foolish. And so I'm very comfortable with looking like a little boy, if you will, like, why did that happen? And, oh, I didn't know that. And my father was much the same way. He didn't care what people thought about him very much. He just cared about his learning profile. And that is the same way that I have developed my personality is I'm comfortable with looking a little foolish to people. It doesn't bother me. If I'm out in the gas station filming with my iPhone and everyone's looking at, why is that American filming these gas station people? I don't really care that they're thinking I look a little foolish. I'm just marveling at their work ethic. And that is what I'm caught up in at the moment, not how sophisticated I look.
And I noticed that you were an Eagle Scout. And I have deep, deep respect for Eagle Scouts. But tell us about your teens. I see that you also drew the attention of Bob Taylor from Taylor Guitars. Right. Tell us some stories about that. And let our listeners get to know you.
Yeah. Well, I think I could summarize it all by one statement. I don't think I'm very smart. I'm a very average person. I did not do well in school. I struggled through school. Academics were very difficult for me. I excelled working with my hands. I excelled in the wood shop. I excelled in very practical things. In contrast, my father was brilliant. My father read a book a day. He could talk about any subject, whether it be philosophy, chemistry, physics, in great depth with anyone and carry the conversation. And I, on the other hand, had a difficult time reading. And so I felt a little bit like a misfit in many regards, even though I was very close to my father. I talked to him every day till the day he died. but I didn't have that acumen of intellectualism. It's naturally bestowed upon me. It was very difficult. So I view myself as a very regular person. If you want to introduce me well, you just say, Paul the Carpenter. I'm a carpenter. And I know that as my life developed, Mark, I had people come alongside me like Bob Taylor, who's a personal friend of me, and I talk to him regularly, who developed me, who invested in me and took this average Paul Akers and made me a little bit better. And I felt that feeling. You said the word feeling. I felt that feeling of what it was like for someone to help me move my life along. And I said, this is the most wonderful feeling in the whole world. And so I said, if I feel that way as a very average person who is not intellectually predisposed, who didn't get an MBA, didn't go to Harvard, don't have a doctorate after my name, what would other average people feel like if somebody came alongside of them and helped them elevate their life? So I've made my whole life about that one thing. How do I help average people feel better about themselves, do better, and have a better life? That's all I care about. And that's why I think I have such an amazing life, because if you focus on the right things, everything else seems to fall into place. Not always, but for the most part, I think much that's the truth.
This is kind of an odd way to say it. I have a very close friend, and he was on the podcast. His name is Pete Lynette, and he doesn't have degrees, and he built this amazing mental health treatment facility that said, I said, Pete, what's one of the secrets to your success? And he has this strange sense of humor, and he says, Mark, everybody helps a dummy. I just come off as dumb. And what happens is people want to help you.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to be this intellectual, know-it-all, whatever, when you come, I'm not helpless. I just come off, and I'm not really ignorant, but he says, but the world comes in and they want to help you.
Absolutely.
There's a pure innocence to it, and people just do that. So can you identify with that sort of sentiment?
I never thought about it that way. I learned something new, and this is very interesting. I never thought about it that way, and I certainly didn't manipulate the field with that context, but I think it's a very interesting point. I think that's the beautiful thing about humanity. I think in and of itself, when you really get down to what's inside of all of us, we can all be very selfish. I think there's a part of us that can also be very selfless. And I think we're tapping into that point of, hey, let me see how I can help somebody else, particularly someone in need. And that's the part of humanity that I love to tap into, that part that is inside of all of us that says, hey, this is the right thing to do.
It's interesting because I'm a fan of Satya Nadella, and he wrote a book called Hit Refresh. Mm-hmm. But part of what he's been talking about is having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Mm-hmm. And that it's better to be a learn-it-all than a know-it-all. I'll bet you could talk to that because it sounds like if we had more people who had a joy of learning, as opposed to people who can't stand learning unless they think of what's it going to get me? What's it going to get me? I don't want to learn that. What's it going to get me? Or people who only learn so that they can know, and then the know is to impress other people.
Well, I'll give you a good example of that, actually, that just happened with me and you. So, I'm a very successful person. I feel very fortunate in my life. In every regard, I could check the boxes of success. And I'm not going to go through any litany there, but that's
check out Paul Akers. He's the real deal. Akers. You'll find.
But having said that, Dr. Goulston, I read your book yesterday, and I was listening to the story of the father who had a bad business, who's not doing well at business, and then his son not doing well with his son. And then you told him to practice these few principles, and he went back and started to restore the relationship with his son and started to restore the relationship with his business, and people gave him a standing ovation. I mean, it's a powerful story. It brings tears to your eyes when you read it. And the successful Paul Akers had to reflect on himself and say, Paul, you have a couple strained relationships that are not so hunky-dory. This message is for you. And
Oh,
I have been thinking long and hard about what I learned yesterday from your book. And it doesn't matter how successful I am, I have weaknesses and I have issues that need to be addressed. And I think that level of vulnerability is so important to be successful at being a human. And yesterday I felt that when I read your book.
so you've listened to some of my podcasts, and so we get a little vulnerable. So Paul, say to me, what I what I could get better at is what?
Not being an asshole.
So how does the asshole come out? Because you were talking, I'm the humble
Ego.
guy, and they take me aside, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
they
yeah.
teach me.
This is why. That's a great question. I love this question. I love how deep this is getting already because I feel offended. I felt betrayed. I felt like people didn't appreciate me. And so when that happens, my cackles get up and I want to get you. And I don't know that that feeling necessarily serves the long-term objective of us improving all of our lives together. It certainly achieves the short-term objective of me feeling good about myself right that moment because I was the one that did all this and you didn't appreciate me. I don't think long-term that's a great way to approach it. And that was what I was confronted with yesterday, right?
So where do you think this feeling that someone's been unjust to you, someone's done you wrong, where does that come from, and that it triggers this anger, and I'm going to get even, and that was wrong, and how dare you, and
Right.
any
Well,
idea?
I can tell you what I think, and it's simply this. I've conducted my life, my entire life, as best as possible to always do things with never expecting anything in return. So my target in life is to help other people. I don't want anything from them. I don't really need anything. At least that's what I say. I don't really need anything from them. But deep down, if I was to be honest, Mark, I would tell you that what I do want is respect. And when I do something for someone, I certainly don't want anything monetarily back from them. I know that for a fact, but I do want a modicum of respect. And I think when someone doesn't give me that respect, that's where that came from. So I have to be honest with myself. I probably do want something, and that something is respect. And I think most people in life, it's part of the way our psychology is set up. I'm not a psychologist, you are, but I think that is the most basic and fundamental thing that all of us need in life is a sense of I'm important enough that I matter to another human being. And we translate that into the word respect. And I think it's so important that we give that. That's why I do what I do at my company, why I develop my people so aggressively on a daily basis through the morning meeting, through our 3S'ing time that you heard me talk about with Vern, is because ultimately I respect our people. I respect their humanity, their dignity, their importance, their intelligence. And I know that if I respect them, that the harmonious relationship that exists at my company will be accelerated. So it makes sense to want to live in that environment of respect. And I think that's the core answer to how I would respond to you. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what I'm thinking out loud.
It's interesting. I think the egotistical part of me would sort of say, oh, I want respect. But I think the heartfelt thing that feels is I just want to feel appreciated. Because what I had thought meant the most to me was that Warren respected me. I mean, Warren, had counseled presidents, and he was a mentor to David Gergen of CNN and Howard Schultz of Starbucks. And, and he was just highly regarded. And what I thought really meant the most to me was that someone like that respected me. But actually, what I wrote about a year later is it wasn't the respect, it's that he enjoyed me. I put a smile on his face. But what happened is and this is what I wrote about, is that I put a smile on his face when I would see him, and it didn't have anything to do with what we were going to talk about, or, what project I was working on. He was glad to see me as me. He enjoyed me. And what happened is it freed me from this feeling of, oh, I guess I'm not a burden to him. And so that's what I wrote about. It was his enjoying me that healed something in me, whereas the respect was nice. Maybe that helped with a little bit of self-esteem, but the enjoying me. Whew. So I don't know if you can relate to any of this. Respect,
Well, I'm learning.
appreciation.
Forget about relating. I'm learning. I'm taking it all in. And I'm thinking to myself, I never thought about that. That is such an important thing. I think of my relationship with Bob Taylor is I'm always concerned about not being a burden to him. But when I'm around Bob and Bob is enjoying my craziness, my curiosity, and he kind of puts a smile on his face, that really is the point where everything comes alive. I love what you're saying. I've never thought about it before.
This would be a cool thing to do, because out of these podcasts, we sometimes brainstorm, and I sometimes suggest things to people. I could see you meeting with some of your people, and what you say, and you look at them and you pause, and they're worried, and they think, oh, what did I do wrong? And what you say to them is, and you look at all of them and you say, do you know how much I enjoy all of you?
Oh my gosh. This whole interview was worth every second, every bit of effort, every email for this one moment that you're talking about right now. To be able to convey that to another human being, they probably never have heard those words before. It sounds like either a great chapter in a book or the great concept of a book. It's powerful.
And so you do that.
Never heard it discussed. I've never heard anybody ever talk about this.
I've never talked about it. We co-created it, Paul.
No, I didn't do anything. I'm just here. I'm here along for the ride, believe me, and I'm enjoying every second of it. It is the very act of being vulnerable. And when we find out we all are weak, we all have problems, we all are inadequate in many ways, and being vulnerable is a good thing in our development as a human being.
I have rediscovered recently that one of the most freeing things you can do in life is to admit you are wrong, flat out wrong.
Right. Well, this was the whole issue of what I learned yesterday in your book. I realized that it would be the most freeing thing in the world to release all that garbage that I'm pissed about this person at, and just say, I'm wrong. I was in an onsen in Japan this morning, and I was thinking about it. I'm not going to say I'm wrong, but I'm not going to say I'm wrong, but this. I'm going to just say I'm wrong.
There are few people in the world that get unsolicited apologies.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't happen. And
again, I always say the most powerful word in the human language is forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. Oh. So what are you thinking? This is a crazy interview, huh, Paul?
Never had one like it ever. And what I feel like we're doing is just two people musing about life, what's important. We're both a little further along in our life than a lot of people. And I think it's important that we have, in the Japanese vernacular, we say hansei, a deep sense of reflection about what's happened in the past and how we can improve for the future. So we're having a wonderful hansei moment here. And it's a good amount of introspection. And I think it's very good.
Oh, this is a chapter. One of the best ways to become lean emotionally is letting go of baggage.
Oh my gosh.
And
Isn't
so
it
there's a friend of mine, and you should look her up, Dr. Shawne, Shawne Duperon. Mm-hmm. And she has the Project Forgive. I think it was nominated for a Nobel Prize. And she gave me, I collect quotes. And I had some really great quotes. And she gave me a quote, just knocked everything, off the table, because it was the best quote I've ever heard. And she said, "Forgiveness is accepting the apology you will never receive."
Again, it's total selflessness. It's not about what you're going to get out of anything. It's about completely your ability to give. You know, we talked about off camera just before we got started. I thought that the whole essence of doing life well comes from one word, and that is gratitude. And that grateful people are happy people.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to be grateful, even though everything's not perfect, even though my mother was not perfect, my father was not perfect, my brother was not perfect, my wife is not perfect, no one's perfect. But I try, not perfectly, to think, how lucky are you to have been given what you have to start with? I'll tell you one of the most powerful stories that has impacted my life to illustrate what I just said. I was in Thailand, and we were driving down the road with our tour guide, and our tour guide spoke English very, very well. And I said to him, I said, "Have you ever been to the United States?" And he said, "Many times." And I said, "What did you think?" And he looked at me and he said these words that I will never, ever, 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 ever forget. "Everything has been prepared for you." In Thailand, to do the simplest thing, we struggle. In the United States, things work. They may not work perfect, but your infrastructure works. Your government is free of corruption comparatively to other countries around the world. It's not perfect. But in perspective, in contrast to what we deal with in Thailand, everything has been prepared for you. And I will never, ever forget those words for the rest of my life. And that is the way I try to think of my life, is that I am but so lucky to have had the platform from which to work from to grow the extraordinary life that I have today.
So I got a new serenity prayer for you that we just invented. God grant me the serenity to not take for granted everything I have.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's funny, Mark, you know, what we do every day in my company, and we've done this for years and years and years and years and years. We have this gigantic, you can see it online if you go on FastCap's Lean Tour. We have hundreds of thousands of views. People have watched it from all over the world. We have two of them, I think combined, there's over 700,000 views of the tours of my company. And we have this gigantic acrylic box in the front of our meeting area where we meet as a team every morning, all 50 of us. And every day, 6 people take a little piece of paper and they write down what they're grateful for. And they walk up to the front and they say, "I'm grateful for my dog. I'm grateful for my cat. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for whatever. I'm grateful for my job at FastCap." And we put it in that box. And we start the day by saying what we're grateful for, because we know grateful people, a grateful culture is the essence, the nucleus of health. Organizational health. And that's the way we start. And it's a very simple thing, but a very powerful concept.
Thank you. This has been a great conversation, and I know my listeners will like it. In fact, Paul's been listening to podcasts. Paul, if you listen to this podcast and you didn't know who was on it, you would like it.
I love it.
So tell people where they can find out more about you, and then we'll call it a day.
Okay, very good. Well, paulakers.net, paulakers.net. All my stuff is there. You can get all my books for free. Like Mark said, like you said, it's in 14, 15 languages, and there's 5 books there and all kinds of great stuff. And we just launched a new app called 2-Second Lean Play on the App Store and on Google Play. And you can download it for free. And it's basically just like Audible, if you're familiar with the Audible app, but it has all my books on there and they're all free. You just download them and you pass them on to anybody. You can pass the app on, you can pass on a chapter, a quote, a certain segment. It's just really easy to use, and it's for the purpose of personal development. How do we improve our lives? By educating ourselves and enlightening and illuminating ourselves. So it's all available along with a whole bunch of other great videos. I've produced thousands of videos that are online. You can just type in Paul Akers on Google and I'll come up pretty quickly. And you'll see my company and how we operate. The most important one that I always say to watch is any of our lean tours. FastCap is the name of my company, FastCap Lean Tour, hundreds of thousands of views. And it's just fun. It kind of shows us how crazy we are. We're kind of a contrarian to the way we do business. And we have a lot of fun doing it. And most importantly of all else, Mark, we love sharing it with other people and helping other people develop healthy organizations. And that's all we really care about. And everything else seems to take care of itself.
So until next time, thank you for tuning in. And
Mark, I want to interrupt you for one thing. I want to say one thing in closing. I enjoyed you. I enjoyed this time, this moment, and what you created so we could learn together. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm working on accepting Warren Bennis, who used to give me compliments. He'd say, Mark, 2 words, thank you. If you say anything more than just thank you, they don't want to give you a compliment. So I'll just say thank you. Take care.
Brought to you by paulakers.net, where you'll find all Paul's books and lean resources for free, including the new 2-second Lean Play app, like Audible, but free. To listen to Lean is Lean on the 2-second Lean Play app at paulakers.net.